plugged into the right program at the right time. So that's coming. It's something that we're working on. We need to get better at that.
Well, education's terrific, but if it doesn't lead to a career or a job, then part of the strategy of this is to make sure they don't return to crime. And what I'm worried about is we're just checking boxes, and we're not thinking in terms of the impact on their lives. And they may not be thinking that far in advance. And if we don't catch it early and say, look, CTE and other areas are going to be a guaranteed job or an opportunity and full employment, then I'm worried that we've compounded the problem because they'll return. We'll blame the education as not being helpful. We won't be able to support it. And really what it came down to is we just didn't give them good guidance in the beginning, saying these are career paths where we know that you're going to have success, right, versus career paths or educations that perhaps lead to nowhere. So that's my greatest concern, right, is that we address that early on.
And as a part of the student success plan, I think we can leverage some of that as well. As I said earlier, when we were talking with colleges about other programs this week, are you or would you be felon friendly? I'm not sure if that's the best terminology, but I was asking those questions because if I'm starting a respiratory care program, could someone who has been incarcerated, could they become a respiratory therapist? And I think it's important for our college programs to know every possible opportunity as well, not just for our CDCR, because I think together we can come up with some particulars that would say you probably won't be an elementary school teacher. And so no matter what we put in here, that probably won't help. But you all don't have to be pipe fitters. And so we need to come up with that career component together. We do it on our campuses. They're going to do it in the prison. So we need to sort of partner with some of those opportunities and make sure that we're teaching each other that process.
I think that you need to drill down just a bit further, too. It's not that they're just felon-friendly. They're this specific felon-friendly. Right. Because going back to your example about elementary school teacher, if you're a pedophile, that will never fit. That will never work. So clearly there are paths that, even though they may be open to somebody who has served time for a Ponzi scheme coming in and doing it, that specific felon needs, drilling down that deeply, I think is important because ultimately the success of this program is going to be judged on how many people are able to change their lives and fit back into society. And I think that we all on this committee are in agreement that this is a high priority for us to allow those a chance of an opportunity who wish to take that opportunity to change their lives. So thank you.
If I think maybe we've discussed this before, Senator Anderson, and part of what I think you were interested in is, do we actually know what licensed professions in California prohibit felons from holding those jobs? Because we ought to have a list of them, and we ought to review them and see if some of them, I think you mentioned cosmetology one time.
Right.
That we had that in several of our women's prisons, but it was in the license that you couldn't be a cosmetologist if you were a felon. And the question would be, number one, is that really a relevant barrier? And number two, then we should change what we're teaching, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the worst thing in my mind is somebody who's committed to changing their life. They put all the effort in, and then we fail them by putting them on a career path like Senator, you just mentioned, where they have no chance at ever working in that career. And I think that those things early on can make a huge difference. We're putting a lot of resources in this. You're putting a lot of time and thought, and I'm thinking this is not about box checking, but outcomes. And I think it's too easy for people just to check the box and say, we've offered them these educations, they've taken them without ever thinking about what is the impact in what we're measuring. And really, what we're measuring is whether we're giving them a valid path to returning to society as good citizens. So I think that we can't lose that vision. Thank you.
Senator
We need to
Anderson.
think about making that happen somehow, maybe budget, I don't know what.
I didn't mean to interrupt Senator Hancock and
That's okay.
Senator Anderson. I did want to point out two elements of the interagency agreement are that the participants would receive academic advising in educational plans. And I think through those two elements, there would be that exact conversation where is this the appropriate training for somebody who has a background in, as you described, where there might be certain professions that are just not an option.
I saw that, but I was still concerned to drill down a little deeper because I'm afraid that somebody who has that career, they're doing the counseling, they're thinking in terms of most students, and they're not looking at it based on the types of students that they have. I mean, perhaps thinking of these students as special needs in the sense that the career paths are limited. So I get what you're saying, but I could see very easily in a bureaucracy that the bureaucrats just checking the box without thinking in terms of the outcome. And this person's given this hope, and they work hard towards that goal, only to find out it's dashed before their very eyes. And that would be a horrible thing to happen.
Yeah, I think that actually, in addition to looking at the credentials, and I don't know if CDCR, do you have a list of the prohibited professions? I wonder where we find it. I'd be interested. I've never seen a complete list.
Yeah, we don't have a complete list either. I'm sure there's certain aspects of, our career technical educations when we were rebuilding the rehabilitative programs, that those were considered as far as, which types of programs we were rebuilding. But, we do have a newly established employment development unit within my division, and I think that that's something that we should be looking at. And one of their charges is to develop employer relationships with people who are willing to hire felons and what their benefits are in doing so, because there are some benefits to that. And so I think that's something that we need to look at. I don't know that there is a complete list, but we can certainly look at how we would go about getting that.
Okay, I'd love to know, just because I hear about it anecdotally, things like cosmetology or other things. Yeah, Senator Anderson.
As you're moving forward with this, I know it's all early, but to me, that's a building block. I mean, without having that, you're not taking it seriously. And so I would think that would be one of the first priorities, because why would you ever want to spend time trying to build a relationship that is out of the range from the very get-go? One of the things I would like, and I hate to put this onus on you, but once you have that, could you send it to us? Because on some of these, like cosmetology and others, I think that the chairwoman and I would like to contact those agencies to find out what the real barrier is. It may be that in the 1800s they decided that this would just be a good thing to put into the code without much thought to it. Certainly if you're a locksmith, there would be some thought to somebody who perhaps has done home invasions, but cosmetology may not fall under that, or there might be some real valid reasons. But so as you discover that, if you could give that back to us, and in a timeline-wise, if we could get it this year, then we could act on it
Brant's
this
can
year.
get it for 24 hours, is that what he said?
That's after you
But
Yeah.
I think this is something that the chairwoman and I would like to move on
Okay.
this year, if possible,
I
and
think
make
we can
changes.
reach out to the Board of Consumer Affairs and ask them for a list of excluded professions, if you will, for that. I would imagine they would have that. Certainly don't want to make any commitments on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So,
Thank you, and if they don't, let us know that too.
okay, you can make a phone call.
Senator Stone, did you want to make any comments?
Sorry, I'm late. Unfortunately, I guess here in the Capitol, we have the scheduling of different committees that meet at the same time, and I regret being here late, but fully support educational programs within our state penitentiary systems, and look forward to catching up with the discussion here today.
Thank you. Well, I guess that will bring our hearing to a close today. We are going to have comments from the public, but this part of it, I just want to thank you again, the four of you. I mean, you are the leaders that can build a new system in California. And we want to back you. Let us know what you need. Let us know the barriers that come up. And let's go out and do this good work. Thank you so much. You've
you,
really done
Senator.
a
Thank you,
tremendous
Senator.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there comments from the public? There are. Would people please come forward?
Just two. Hi again. I'm John Kern, the chair of Bargaining Unit 3, SEIU Local 1000. We've spoken many times in this setting and otherwise. A former correctional educator for 30 years now, and a person who maybe by chance has had some of these experiences, having given college credit along with my colleagues in the 80s in the setting of the prison, seen in-person college programs in place, operating very productively. And even to go back to the question you raised about offering similar college opportunities to correctional staff, it occurred to me that part of my program delivered specialized instruction in qualifying inmates for the Qualified Applicator Certificate, which is a pesticide applicator's certification, also offered in our local community college. And it turned out that members of our staff sat in that class, and members of the public who were other public agency employees, such as the City of Soledad Public Works Department, sat in the class side by side with inmates to receive this instruction and test preparation from me, and then sat side by side in the testing session that the Department of Pesticide Regulation gave. So those kind of opportunities are great and very successful and really should be pursued. The other experience, less positive, that I want to remind everyone in the room of is that I arrived at work at Soledad Prison one day to see a giant banner stretched across the highway overpass that said basically, use a gun, get a college degree. And it was mostly correctional officers on that bridge, having been brought out in victims' rights groups. So it's a challenge that can be overcome, but it's a reality of our political system. There's a great quote that's actually it's kind of simple, but every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So our correctional system is undergoing huge changes, and that's wonderful, but our California political system needs to catch up because it's still perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And Rebecca Silbert had a great quote, which is that a graduate makes a great contributing member of society as opposed to a dropout making a future incarcerated individual. We need to do what we can with the incarcerated, but we also need to do what we can to fix the system that drives so many people out of the education system prior to incarceration and really turn a corner on this. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands SEIU is very excited about this. Rebecca mentioned the prison teacher survey we did about a year ago, and one of the strongest statements that the teachers made was in support of enhanced and expanded college opportunity. We welcome it. We want to be part of the learning communities you mentioned to make sure that it works. As you know, we have some caveats. We have some limits. We are aware that the community college system to a large degree, does remedial and college prep instruction in the communities, and that's work we already do in our fairly vital, needs to grow a little bit more, but fairly vital prison correctional education system. So as long as we have a nice line and coordination between prepping our students for college and giving them that realistic hope to continue, that's a fabulous motivation, and it's going to only increase the positive outcomes for everyone involved. It occurred to me also when you mentioned about the need for a gatekeeper. Quality control is extremely important to us. Program effectiveness needs to be top priority if programs are expected to survive and be supported by the taxpayers. So I wanted to suggest that a few years ago, we promoted a bill that was eventually vetoed, but it would have established a correctional education school district throughout California. And so that's another opportunity to create a board, create some sort of board with a little more than advisory powers, perhaps, to coordinate all the aspects of correctional education, which we have to remember start with basic non-readers, of which we still have plenty, and the largely learning disabled population that somehow has failed in the regular education system and ends up incarcerated. Not always for that reason, but there's certainly a certain nexus there. So that this expansion of the vision of the master plan for higher education can truly be integrated, and we can start addressing that. With me is Maureen Thompson. She's a correctional educator at Soledad Prison, academic, recently of one of these voluntary education program teachers. Part of their duty is to coordinate the existing college programs. So she probably has some comments on how that can be improved and how the transition might go better.
That would be great. Did I meet you, by the way, at Folsom?
I believe we have met, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. You look very
I have
familiar.
met with some of the other
Okay.
members of the board, too.
Yeah.
Again, as John Kern said, my name is Maureen Thompson. I have been teaching at the Correctional Training Facility since 2000, which makes this almost 15 years. I have taught at many different levels, and I have had several times where I have been part of the Coastline, the Volunteer Education Program, or the Coastline Community College Program. First off, one of the things that you were talking about, metrics and measuring standards, one of the things that would probably solve one of the problems of whether people have a GED or high school diploma in CDCR is to bring back the registrars in every prison. They were cut through standardized staffing and the big massive layoff of 45% of the teachers in the adult division back in 2009. The new SOMS program eventually will make it easy for teachers to look up whether they have a high school diploma or GED. But getting the information in requires sending out requests to school districts and getting them transferred, and somebody needs to look at it. Teachers can only do that part-time. That is the way it's been handled in some of the prisons that I'm aware of. The other thing is that the schools that are in the prisons are actually separate schools. We are WASC accredited. WASC is the Western Associations of Schools and Colleges. Every teacher has to keep their credentials current. So you have a very well-qualified staff, both in the career technical and in the academic. And for Assemblymember Mr. Anderson.
Senator.
I'm sorry, Senator.
Please, we work
First time doing it. I'm very sorry. Senator Anderson, one of the things that the student cannot become is a teacher, because people with felonies are not allowed to be teacher no matter what the felony was. So I know it's part of my credentialing, which I have to renew every 5 years, so that's one of the things. Okay, the other thing is sometimes students don't know what they want. Just like on the outside, on the street, which I have taught too, what we call the street, it means in public school, not in prison system. And they don't always know what they want. And a good teacher, although we have to walk a very fine line because there's something called overfamiliarity, which can cost us our job in CDCR, we do try and help them and counsel them to what could be the best. Those of us who call Coastline to resolve issues, help them get in touch with instructors, help them get the books that they need, make sure that they get what their families pay for. Now, when they're lockdowns, yes, we have to reducket them to take tests. We have to call the university and tell them we had a bad lockdown. Their inmates could not get their tests on time on the scheduled date. This is the reason why. Most of the time, the professors don't have a problem with that. Sometimes they do. So I just want to say I'm really excited about the idea that we're going to have more programming. I am excited that you're concerned about the fact that the staff in place should have more training, our correctional officers and other staff, plus the teachers who help administer these programs, because we're excited about college. We all went to college, so we want our students to succeed. One of the things I wish when I see them parole, I tell them, don't go hang with the people who got you in here. Don't go back to your old ways, but we'll leave, and don't come back, but we'll leave the light on. So, anyway, any questions? Thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I do really thank you for your very thoughtful comments and suggestions, and I know that we'll take them into consideration as we move forward. I think that you guys have such a critical role in the preparation of people then to go on to higher education. And I was actually had a question I was going to ask that I didn't, but maybe we can all explore it together. In one of the reports that we read, they talked about the Washington State iBest program, which is a very focused preparation of students doing GED and basic skills and high school diplomas. And this is totally the bailiwick of the education work that you all do in the prison. So I think as we move forward, there's going to be an expansion of opportunity at this point too. And it should start, I would hope, almost as soon as students
24 hours.
enter. No,
24 hours.
that's Brant going to get back to us with the whatever it was. Anyway,
He
so
had his
I want
phone
to
out
thank
doing
you
work,
guys.
it looked like.
But I don't actually have comments, just to welcome you as partners in this. It's going to take everybody on every level of what's going on in
Right.
the system.
Well, we're very pleased to be part of improving
Thank
public
you.
policy as always, and I really appreciate Senator Anderson's drilling down about the career counseling, because that's so important. Just offering. It reminded me of a comment I made when I was brand new to the Capitol, trying to explain correctional education to a committee that Senator Leno was chairing quite a few years ago. I said, correctional education exists because without hope, a prison is unmanageable, and education provides hope. But our job as correctional educators is to make sure it's not false hope. There is too much false hope in the low quality, the high demand for the low quality college that they've identified that we have now, the distance learning that's standard courses, and it sounds good, and there's a lot of demand for it, to the point where inmates, without the preparation or trying to get involved, sometimes succeeding, but are they building a future? Are they doing anything to get a credential that will truly make them employable? And are they having the experience that the best education brings, which is to open your heart And that's a phrase I recently heard when I was in a discussion with teachers comparing the GED path versus the high school diploma. Now that the GED is getting harder, the high school diploma looks like a more viable option to some students. And the teacher who has a lot of experience in delivering the high school diploma made that as one of her arguments, that it's more likely to have the heart-opening experience when you have the face-to-face and when you have the, you work yourself through a long-term, well-designed program as opposed to cramming for an exam and then sitting down and getting a GED in one day, so.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the public? If not, we're going to close the hearing, and again, your participation was so valuable. This is the beginning of the conversation.